Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ada Masai with Pulse of African News, bringing you the latest stories and updates from across the continent. Kenya marked its 62nd Jamhuri Day with a colorful national celebration at Nyayo Stadium, Nairobi, presided over by President William Ruto and attended by several regional leaders. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama was the chief guest, reflecting the long-standing ties between Kenya and Ghana, two countries that have historically championed African unity. Mahama's attendance also comes at a time when both nations are engaging in deeper economic and diplomatic collaboration. Other dignitaries included Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, Uganda's Prime Minister Robina Nabanja, and Burundi's Vice President Prosper Banzombanza, alongside senior government officials, diplomats, and thousands of citizens. This year's Jamhuri Day celebrations focused on national unity, economic development, digital innovation, and Kenya's role in promoting stability across the region. President Ruto highlighted ongoing reforms in agriculture, technology, and public service delivery, while calling for stronger regional partnerships to address shared challenges such as insecurity, climate change, and trade barriers. The 62nd anniversary commemorates Kenya's declaration as a republic on December 12, 1963, marking a key milestone in the country's journey towards self-governance and development. The Central African Republic is preparing to hold a quadruple election in the coming weeks. Voters will be called to the polls on 28 December to elect their president and lawmakers, as well as local and municipal leaders. The United Nations envoy for Central Africa told the UN Security Council that the upcoming vote could mark a turning point for Bangui, as the country is trying to recover from decades of violence and instability. This is an opportunity to commend the remarkable recovery of the country, which is laying the foundations for peace consolidation among domestic actors and has undertaken measures to secure its borders, notably with Chad and Cameroon, said Abdou Abari, the special representative for Secretary General for Central Africa and head of the United Nations Regional Office for Central Africa. The Central African Republic is still grappling with the insecurity on the back of civil war that erupted in 2012. The Security Council established a stabilization mission, MINUSCA, in 2014 to help restore peace. Armed groups are still regularly perpetrating attacks across the country. Earlier this year, the UN said the upcoming elections represent a crucial opportunity to strengthen democratic governance, promote reconciliation, and consolidate stability. The United States and Eswatini have signed a 5-year, $242 million health agreement aimed at strengthening the country's health system. Washington plans to provide up to $205 million for disease monitoring, health data systems, and HIV prevention and treatment, while Eswatini will increase domestic health spending by $37 million. The deal also includes the rollout of the U.S.-made HIV prevention drug lenacapavir. The State Department said the agreement supports long-term health system sustainability and protects health gains in both countries. Eswatini is the latest African nation to sign such a pact, following recent agreements with Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Lesotho. Tchiloli, The Tchiloli, the centuries-old theater tradition of Sao Tomé and Principe, has been inscribed on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list at the organization's 28th Committee session in New Delhi. The recognition marks Sao Tomé's first ever entry on the global register. The inscription follows a long application process that began in 2015. After losing key documents, authorities relaunched studies in 2023, eventually securing the Tchiloli's inclusion in the National Heritage Inventory earlier this year. Performed outdoors during festivals and public gatherings, the Tchiloli brings together actors, musicians, and the community. The play centers on a public murder trial involving around 30 actors, portraying figures from the judicial system, the emperor's court, and the victim's family. The storyline where the emperor's son faces trial symbolizes fairness and equality before the law. UNESCO has outlined several safeguarding measures to strengthen the tradition to be carried out by the Tchiloli network with support from the government. These include organizing cultural events and competitions, documenting and promoting the art form, expanding community participation, training young performers, and establishing resource centers, a living museum, and academic forums dedicated to Tchiloli. Next up, business news. Nigeria and the European Union have signed a £45 million program to advance the country's digital transformation, completing the EU's digital economy package for Nigeria. The agreement was signed in Brussels by Nigeria's Communications and Digital Economic Minister, Dr. Bosun Tijani, and EU Commissioner for International Partnerships, Joseph Sikela. The funding supports Project Bridge, a flagship global gateway initiative to deploy 90,000 kilometers of fiber optic backbone across Nigeria, part of £1.7 billion plan backed by the EBRD, World Bank, and AFDB. The grant will finance detailed network design, digital skills training, and supply chain support, while also helping modernize Nigeria's e-government services. Both sides say the partnership aims to boost digital skills, expand connectivity, and create new opportunities for European investors and Nigerian youth. South Africa's Electronic Communications Act requires foreign-owned communications licensees to sell 30% of equity in their local subsidiaries to historically disadvantaged groups, a provision criticized by Starlink and other companies. In his policy direction published in a government gazette on Friday, Communications Minister Solly Malatsi said so-called equity-equivalent investment programs in the sector should count toward empowerment goals. The policy changes will allow communications companies, including Starlink, to bypass the 30% equity requirement, instead recognizing investments in things like digital infrastructure. The final policy direction reinforces the need for regulatory parity. It does not favor any entity, bypass the Electronic Communications Act, or weaken transformation, Malatsi said. The alignment will help attract more investment, support meaningful transformation, and improve the lives of South Africans, especially those in rural and underserved communities who still lack access to high-speed internet, he added. Next, sport news. CAF and the Local Organizing Committee, LOC, have reiterated their commitment to providing top-level working conditions for accredited media covering the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations AFCON Morocco 2025. At a joint coordination meeting, the two bodies reviewed progress on key media-related operations, including the state-of-the-art main media center in Rabat, which will serve as the central hub for journalists throughout the tournament. The center will become operational on 17th December 2025 and remain open daily until midnight on the final day, 18th January 2026. The LOC also briefed CAF on the e-visa process for media via the Yalla app, highlighting enhanced measures to ensure priority support. Dedicated WhatsApp and email hotlines have been set up to assist accredited media with full contact details to be shared directly with them. The Yalla app has been confirmed as the official digital platform for managing visa applications, fan ID, ticketing, and access information, helping media complete all mandatory procedures smoothly ahead of travel. CAF and the LOC encouraged media representatives to begin the process early to ensure timely support. CAF revealed that more than 5,400 media accreditation applications have already been received worldwide, reflecting the strong global interest in AFCON Morocco 2025. Next, let's check the current weather forecast. Thank you for joining us on Pulse of African News. Keep following us for more stories that matter across the continent.
This is Editorial from Pulse of Africa, the voice and face of Africa.
Breaking the cycle, strengthening democracy and resilience against coups in Africa. Over the past half-century, Africa has witnessed grim stories of national and regional destabilization due to a spate of coups staged at various times in different nations. But the modern history of Africa, which is dubbed conveniently as the post-colonial period, does not recognize any government that ascended to the mantle of power through unconstitutional means, including through a coup, to have managed the lofty responsibilities that came with it. Managing power for the benefits of society, for the common good, is one of the tests of government, and those taking the helm by means of the barrel of the gun often fail to do society good. Studies agree without exception that coups devastate local communities by causing immediate insecurity, human rights abuses, killing, sexual violence, displacement and economic collapse through trade disruption, sanctions and halted development, leading to poverty, food insecurity and interrupted education, while also fostering long-term mistrust, political instability and potential for extremist recruitment, creating cycles of violence and making recovery harder. Cognizant of the outcomes of coups, which are always detrimental to the healthy functioning of society, the African Union has long introduced what should have been deterrents or guardrails against such incidents. It combats unconstitutional changes, usages like coups, mercenary takeovers, rebel seizures, and refusal to cede power via instruments such as the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance 2007, and the Lomé Declaration 2000. It tries to do so by defining usages broadly and mandating sanctions like the suspension of the country in question from the AU and targeted measures against perpetrators with a view to restoring democracy. Such decisions and sanctions are enforced by the Political Affairs, Peace and Security (PAPS) of the Pan-African body. In spite of the AU's legal frameworks, which may agree are strong instruments, too many coups have occurred over the past several years across Africa, with the Western Africa region being disproportionately affected. The unsuccessful attempt of December 7, 2025 to overthrow the constitutionally elected government of President Patrice Talon, who has been serving since 2016, not only raised the alarm across the continent, but also woke the regional economic and trade bloc, ECOWAS, to move and intervene by deploying troops. Between 2021 and late 2025, Africa saw a significant wave of military takeovers, with successful coups in Mali, Chad, Guinea, and Sudan in 2021, Burkina Faso in 2022, Niger and Gabon in 2023, and more recently in Guinea-Bissau in November 2025 and Madagascar in October 2025, alongside failed attempts, highlighting a growing trend of democratic backsliding and military influence. Independent bodies such as the African Union (AU), regional economic communities (RECs) like ECOWAS, and civil society organizations strongly condemned unconstitutional changes of government in Africa. Their primary argument is that such changes undermine democracy, the rule of law, and regional stability. While their outcomes may have been more or less similar, not all coups are the same in terms of cause and level of popularity. For instance, the coups that occurred in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso purported to have stood against what the perpetrators describe as puppet governments supported by foreign governments, and for that reason, these coups seem to have achieved a degree of popularity in the region and elsewhere as being anti-neocolonialist moves. If these military agents who led these coups elect to cling to their newfound power, which has been left to civilian rule, they will have failed utterly. One thing is certain though, coups are feared to have a domino effect as others with mere lust to power are apt to follow suit. Calls have been growing stronger for political will and preventive measures. In this regard, the deployment of troops by ECOWAS to Benin, saving the Beninese regime from falling prey, came as a collective security move that should be emulated in all regions of the continent. There needs to be a collective preparedness to tackle coups if and when they rear their ugly heads. The African Union has strong legal frameworks, but it cannot go any further than imposing sanctions against countries where coups have taken place and some actions against perpetrators. Key AU instruments and norms include Constitutive Act of the AU, Article 4P, that condemns and rejects UCGs, barring such governments from AU activities. Lomé Declaration 2000 serves as the first framework that defined UCGs, coups, mercenaries, rebels' refusal to step down. Moreover, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance (ACDEG) 2007 prohibits UCGs while also broadening the definitions to include constitutional manipulation, such as extending terms. According to the expanded definition, UCG constitutes military coups, mercenary interventions, takeovers by armed dissidents or rebels, refusal to hand over power after free elections, constitutional amendment to extend tenure, or subvert democracy. AU's response framework: condemnation and suspension, immediate public condemnation and suspension from AU policy organs. Time frame: a period of 6 months for restoration of constitutional order. Sanctions if order isn't restored. Targeted sanctions, travel bans, asset freezes are imposed on regimes. Independent bodies universally agree that power must be gained and transferred constitutionally, primarily through free, fair and transparent elections. One of the most fundamental arguments is a zero-tolerance policy for any seizure of power by illegal means, whether by the military, mercenaries or rebel groups, as it violates the principle of civilian rule. Evidently, usages inherently involve abrogating or suspending the constitution and terminating normal democratic processes such as elections and the rule of law. This weakens state institutions and public trust. There are also many organs, including think tanks and civil society, that argue that to effectively prevent UCGs, the African Union and RECs must address the root causes, which include poor governance, corruption, lack of accountability, institutional decay, and socio-economic inequalities. Meanwhile, there has been growing recognition of the fact that external interference fuels African coups through geopolitical competition, exploiting resource wealth and backing different factions in civil wars. African governments must come together and revisit the instruments against the UCGs that have been put in place so far in terms of the extent to which they have been effective or otherwise to deal with the increasing threat posed. In conclusion, the cycle of coups in Africa is both a symptom and a catalyst of deeper political, economic and social fragilities. While the African Union and regional bodies have established robust frameworks to combat unconstitutional changes of government, inconsistent enforcement, weak governance and external interference continue to undermine these efforts. Lasting solutions demand more than sanctions. They require proactive institution building, inclusive governance, strengthen civil society, and regional collaboration to address root causes like corruption, inequality, and youth disenfranchisement. Only by combining consistent enforcement of democratic norms with sustainable development and local empowerment can Africa break the recurring cycle of coups, protect civilian populations, and secure a stable, prosperous, and democratic future. Coups are detrimental to all African daily values, to ideals enshrined in Agenda 2063, a continent at peace with itself and prosperous.
This is Editorial from Pulse of Africa, the voice and face of Africa.